They say you should always trust a dog's instincts, especially when that dog is part of the force. It was 4:42 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the F line was jammed. Commuters in heavy coats hurried through the damp tunnels of 34th Street Herald Square, earbuds in, eyes glued to their screens, chasing the next train like it was routine. Then a bark shattered the rhythm. It was deep and sharp, echoing off the tiles and slicing through the noise, the kind of bark that makes you stop in your tracks, heart pounding, because you know something's off. Officer Matt Daniels froze. His partner Rex, a 3-year-old German shepherd, stood tense on the yellow edge of the platform, fur bristling, teeth bared, gaze fixed on a woman holding a baby. The woman halted, clutching the child closer and shifting a canvas bag on her shoulder. "He's just nervous," she said with a shaky laugh. "Dogs never seem to like me." But Rex wasn't nervous. He was blocking her way, refusing to budge. The train thundered closer just seconds away. Matt moved forward, hand hovering near his holster, not to draw, just in case. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the edge," he said. "I'm late," she replied, voice tight. "My baby's sick. I have to get uptown to the hospital." But neither Rex nor Matt seemed convinced. The shepherd let out a low, rumbling growl, lowering himself protectively, not in front of Matt, but between the woman and the tracks. He was guarding the child. People around them started to notice. Some pulled out their phones, others whispered, watching the scene unfold. The woman glanced around, then back at Matt. "I'm not doing anything wrong," she insisted. Matt didn't argue. He just radioed in. "Unit 14, possible 1029F on Platform 3, requesting backup. K9 showing strong alert." It wasn't standard to detain someone without cause, but Rex's reaction was more than a simple alert. It was protective, almost parental. He made it clear she'd have to get past him to board that train. The train screeched to a stop. Doors opened, but no one moved. All eyes were on the dog. 5 minutes later, backup arrived. The woman stayed calm, but her eyes darted, scanning exits, uniforms, calculating her options. The baby, maybe a year old, maybe less, was strangely silent. No crying, no babbling, just wide eyes and quiet breaths. Officer Daniels kept his tone gentle. "What's your baby's name?" She blinked. "Liam." "Date of birth?" "January 5th. He caught the hesitation.
"Middle name?"
She hesitated again. Rex stepped closer, sniffed the baby's foot, then gave a short, sharp bark. Matt nodded to the other officers. "Let's separate them for a moment." That's when things started to unravel. Are you hooked? This is just the beginning. If you love real-life rescues, K9 heroes, and stories from the front lines, hit subscribe on Animal Heroes. You won't want to miss what happens next. The woman was led aside, still calm, almost too calm. EMS checked the child. No injuries, no distress, but something was off. No diaper bag, no formula, no bottle, just a duffel with adult clothes, a half-empty water bottle, and a burner phone. Rex sat beside the child, unmoving. Matt crouched next to his partner. "What did you find, boy?" Rex didn't bark again. He just stared at the woman, now sitting on a bench, hands clasped, breathing fast. A detective arrived 15 minutes later. The woman's ID checked out, but when they ran a facial scan of the child through the Transit Emergency Database, a new protocol when K9s raise alarms, they got a hit. A missing child, reported 3 days ago, from another borough, with a different name and a different woman listed as the guardian. Everything changed. The woman didn't resist when asked to come in for questioning, but her story kept shifting. The child wasn't hers. She claimed she was babysitting but couldn't provide the mother's last name, had no photos of the child, and didn't know the pediatrician's name. By the time Child Protective Services arrived, Rex was still at the toddler's side, watching every move, every stranger who came near. The child finally spoke when an officer handed him a juice box. Just 2 words, "Want to go." Not mama, not home, just a quiet plea to leave. That night Rex didn't return to his usual kennel. Instead, he stayed curled up beside the boy in the precinct's soft-lit interview room, keeping watch until the child drifted off to sleep, his small hand resting on the dog's fur. The woman was held on suspicion of abduction. The phone in her duffel was unlocked, using a code scribbled on a gum wrapper found in her coat. Inside, detectives found dozens of encrypted messages, photos, drop-off addresses, fake names, and GPS pins. One location stood out, a storage facility in Queens. Detectives flagged it, but they needed more evidence. That would come in part 2. But if there's one thing to remember from this story so far, it's this. Rex didn't just stop a woman from boarding a train. He prevented a child from vanishing and maybe, just maybe, saved more than one life. Stay tuned. Detective Serena Walsh had seen a lot in her 12 years with the NYPD Special Victims Unit, but never a case sparked by a K9's instincts. She sat in the precinct's back office reviewing the subway footage. It had taken less than a minute for the German Shepherd to block the woman's path, but what happened next set everything in motion. The woman's refusal to meet anyone's gaze, the child's unsettling silence, and Rex, who never left the toddler's side even as the station buzzed with activity. Walsh paused the video and leaned back. The tech team had just finished breaking into the burner phone. Most messages were encrypted, but a few were simple texts with GPS coordinates, some marked only with initials and dollar amounts. One message stood out. Unit 118. Code drop cleared. Next intake Friday. Attached was a PIN Queens, a storage facility off Northern Boulevard. By 6:01 a.m. the next day, a 4-person task force gathered outside the gates of Empire Lock and Store, a squat building with cracked pavement and rust-stained doors. The city was still quiet. Rex sat alert in the back of the patrol SUV, ears perked, already sensing something the others couldn't. Officer Matt Daniels tightened his grip on the leash as the gate creaked open. Rex didn't need words, just a nod. Walsh signaled the team.
We go slow.
We don't know what's inside. Unit 118 was at the far end. Matt opened Rex's door and the shepherd jumped down, nose to the ground, body tense. As they neared the unit, Rex's tail stiffened. He let out a single, sharp growl. Walsh gave the signal. The bolt cutters snapped. The metal door rattled up with a harsh clang. Then, silence. Even Rex froze. Inside, a flickering fluorescent bulb lit a narrow, dust-choked room. Cardboard boxes lined one wall. A folding cot sat in the corner. Moving blankets hung on the walls, muffling sound. In the center, 6 car seats. 4 were empty. 2 were not. Walsh stepped back. Call EMS now. An officer rushed to check the children. A little girl, maybe 2, blinked, dazed but breathing. Next to her, a boy with hollow eyes sat motionless, staring into space. Rex whined softly and stepped forward, gently nudging the girl's leg. Matt swallowed hard. Easy, buddy. We've got them. The room wasn't meant for long-term stays. The storage unit wasn't meant for long-term stays, just a stopover before the next move. Bottled water, diapers, and stale protein bars were stacked near a folding chair. The phone from the woman's bag had messages pointing to a second contact, likely the handler, but it was the small notebook hidden behind the cot that changed everything. Inside were dates, codes, initials, and cryptic notes. No ID. School bus. 3 siblings, 1 kept. At the bottom, a name was scrawled. Walsh let out a slow breath. She recognized that name from an old case file, 2 years back, a foster home in Bed-Stuy. A child had vanished without a trace. The babysitter claimed the mother picked her up, but the mother, living in another state, said she hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks. The child was never found, until now. Back at the precinct, the woman in custody refused to give her real name, arms folded tightly across her chest. Her calm exterior had cracked. "They're not mine," she muttered when Walsh entered the room. "No, they're not," Walsh replied, sliding a photo of the storage unit across the table. The woman stared, lips pressed tight. "We found 2, Walsh said quietly. "One of them has been missing for almost 2 years. Want to tell me how she got there?" Silence. "What happens Friday?" Still nothing. The woman leaned back, eyes cold. "You won't stop it. You think it's just me?" Walsh didn't blink. "No, I think it's bigger. That's why we're not stopping." The toddler from the subway, Rex's first alert, was identified later as Eli Ramirez, reported missing just 48 hours earlier. His foster mother thought he was with a relative. The relative thought the opposite. A clean handoff, the kind that slips through the cracks, unless something interrupts the cycle. Something like a dog that refuses to move. That evening, Matt sat with Rex on the precinct's back stairwell, the autumn air drifting in. "You did good, partner," he whispered, scratching Rex behind the ears. The dog leaned in, eyes half closed. Because of him, 2 more children were safe, but how many more were still out there? That night, Walsh stood over the evidence board, new photos and strings connecting the clues. The woman hadn't fully cracked, but every device and file led to more. The SIM card from the burner phone showed she'd moved through 5 boroughs in 6 months, never using the same name twice, always with a child, always just out of reach. But now they had her, and more importantly, proof. She wasn't the mastermind. She was a courier. The next morning's headlines blared, K9 unit foils kidnapping, uncovers child trafficking ring. But the media didn't know the whole story. Not about the messages, not about the next GPS pin, not about the name faintly scratched in the notebook, Harbor. Matt got home around 11 p.m. The city outside never really slept, but for a moment, it felt still. Rex curled up by the door, content with just a patch of floor. Matt looked at his badge on the table, then at the photo from the precinct. Rex and Eli, the toddler clutching the K9's vest like a lifeline. Matt had seen all kinds of courage on the job, but nothing like the loyalty and instinct of his 4-legged partner. They'd made a difference, but it was only the beginning. The real fight was still ahead, and whatever waited at the next location, Rex would be ready. The air at Pier 42 always carried a salty mix of diesel and decay. To most, it was just another forgotten corner of Manhattan's East River. But to Detective Walsh, it had started to mean something else. She stood beside Officer Daniels, who knelt next to Rex. The German Shepherd's nose twitched, ears flicking toward the old cargo warehouse at the end of the pier, abandoned since a fire last winter. But that wasn't what had caught Rex's attention. It was something else, something human. The address had come from a nearly deleted GPS pin on the burner phone, labeled only Harbor Final. After that last timestamp, there were no more messages. Walsh didn't believe in coincidences. She and the team approached the warehouse with caution. The windows were long gone, replaced by warped boards and rusted metal jutting from crumbling concrete. Daniels gave Rex the signal, and the dog surged ahead, nose to the ground, following invisible trails only he could sense. He stopped at a side entrance, tail stiff, and barked, once, then again. Walsh raised her hand. "We're going in." Inside, the warehouse reeked of mildew, oil, and old rope. Dust covered most of the floor, except for one corner where it had been disturbed. Footprints, drag marks, clear signs of recent activity. "Movement here," an officer called out. Then Rex did something unusual. He whined. Daniels swept his flashlight across the shadows, the beam catching on a large crate, its lid cracked open. Inside was a child's blanket, faded blue with cartoon animals, torn at the edges. Rex sniffed. It then turned sharply toward a wall that looked solid, until they tapped it, hollow. A hidden panel swung open, revealing a narrow, rusted staircase leading down. Walsh keyed her radio. "Possible underground chamber. Requesting backup and child services. Proceeding with caution." They descended, flashlights cutting through the darkness. At the bottom they found a tunnel. Low ceiling, damp walls, extension cords taped along the concrete. Someone had wired the place for both light and secrecy. Rex moved ahead, focused, leading the way. The tunnel opened into a makeshift living area. Mattresses on pallets, empty water jugs, a pile of children's shoes by the wall. Faint light filtered in from a cracked skylight, just enough to see 3 children huddled in the center, all under 10. They flinched at the flashlight beams. Rex stopped, sat, and waited. The oldest, a girl with tangled hair and bruised wrists, spoke first. "Is the dog going to bite us?" "No, sweetheart," Walsh said softly, kneeling down. "He's here to help." The girl broke down in tears, and soon the others followed. Within minutes, the place was filled with medics, counselors, and detectives. The children had been kept underground for at least a week, maybe longer. No fresh air, no heat, just fear and silence. As officers carefully led them out, Rex stayed put, staring at a locked steel box under one of the mattresses. Walsh nodded to Daniels, who pried it open. Inside were passports, fake birth certificates, medical records, school forms, an entire kit for creating new identities. Some names matched missing children's reports. Others didn't. Some kids had never even been reported missing. Back at the precinct, the investigation accelerated. The woman from the subway, still refusing to give her real name, was transferred to federal custody. The evidence was overwhelming. She wasn't just involved in a single abduction. She was coordinating a trafficking network that moved children from borough to borough, some stolen, some lost in the foster system, others handed over by desperate families who never saw them again. But it was Rex who made the final connection. That evening, back at the station, he headed straight for the evidence locker. Daniels thought he was just hungry, but Rex ignored his food bowl. Instead, he sat beside a sealed evidence bag containing the tattered blue blanket from the warehouse, pressing his nose against it. Then he turned to the corner, where little Eli sat with a caseworker. The boy looked up, his tired eyes brightening for the first time all day. He whispered, "Wex." They checked the blanket again. Sewn into the corner, barely visible, was the name Wren. The woman had lied about almost everything, except one thing. She wasn't working alone. Phone records placed her near a Brooklyn foster facility just 2 weeks earlier. Surveillance footage showed her speaking briefly with a man in a contractor's vest, clipboard in hand. He was in and out in 10 minutes. The child he left with was never seen again. That night, Walsh gathered her team in the briefing room. "We have 7 confirmed victims, 3 more identified, but this isn't over," she said, tapping the evidence board. "The pattern shows movement through transit lines, storage units, and now abandoned buildings." She circled a name. Oscar Delano. Last known address, Long Island City. Last known alias, Building Inspector. The man from the surveillance footage, their next lead. Later, Daniels sat outside the precinct with Rex. This time, they weren't alone. Eli stood beside them, clutching a small stuffed animal a nurse had given him. The boy reached out, gently stroking Rex's fur. "Thank you," he whispered. Rex's tail thumped for the first time all day. Daniels smiled, watching the boy settle next to the dog as if it was the safest place in the world. "Yeah, buddy," he murmured to Rex. "You did good, but we're not finished yet." Oscar. Delano had the kind of face that faded into the background. Thin, weathered, always hidden under a cap or behind a clipboard. He could pass for anyone, a building inspector, a delivery guy, a maintenance worker. That was his advantage, and it made him dangerous. Detective Walsh stared at his DMV photo, now pinned to the SVU board. The image was grainy, forgettable, the kind of face no one ever remembers clearly. "He doesn't take the kids himself," she told the team. "He sets up the locations, organizes the handoff, then vanishes." They had him on camera leaving a group home in Brooklyn 3 weeks earlier. No record of a visit, no appointment, no one even recalled seeing him. But the child he left with, a 7-year-old girl named Janelle, never returned. Now her name was among those found in the fake documents at the warehouse. The address linked to Oscar's last alias was a duplex in Long Island City, registered to a shell company, no official tenant. Utilities paid in cash at a corner store drop box. The team arrived just after 10 a.m. Rex was already restless in the back of the cruiser, ears alert. Daniel stepped out and scanned the block. It was eerily quiet for a weekday morning in New York. A newspaper sat untouched on the stoop, the mailbox overflowed, but a curtain in the upstairs window shifted slightly. Someone was inside. They knocked 3 times. No answer. Walsh gave the signal. Daniels tugged Rex's vest. "Go find," he whispered. Rex moved toward the side alley, sniffing along the fence, then stopped at the basement grate, body tense. He growled. Walsh called it in. "Possible occupant inside. K9 is signaling." The grate was old and rusted but loose. Daniels knelt beside it. "Smells like mold and gas, but he's onto something." They pried it open. Rex slipped through first, disappearing into the darkness. Seconds later, he barked. Inside, the basement reeked of bleach and burnt plastic. The lights were out. Daniels followed, flashlight sweeping over cinder block walls and empty shelves. Then he saw it. A cot, a plastic bin, duct tape, a child's sock, and Rex sitting beside a locked door, whining. Daniels radioed in. "We need backup inside. Active scene." Walsh joined him moments later. The door was reinforced from the inside, metal brackets and a heavy latch. They pried it open carefully. Inside was a narrow panic room. A single child sat on a foam mat, blinking in the sudden light. It was Janelle. She didn't scream or cry. She just stared. Rex moved first, approaching slowly, then lay down a foot away. The girl inched forward, hand trembling, and touched his ear. Then she whispered, "I knew someone would come." Walsh swallowed hard. Daniel stepped into the hallway. Room clear. One child recovered. Suspect not on site, but he left something. Taped to the fridge was a note. "You won't stop this. I'm not the beginning. I'm not the end." Below it, a crude map of a school. No name, just hallways, arrows, and a red X near the gym. Back at the precinct, the detective studied the map. The gym layout matched several city schools, but one stood out: Jefferson Elementary in Staten Island. The school was under renovation, temporarily closed. No students for 2 weeks. A perfect spot for a secret exchange. Or worse. The next morning, Daniels and Rex joined the SVU convoy crossing the Verrazzano Narrows Bridge, heading for Staten Island and whatever waited for them at Jefferson Elementary. They had already coordinated with Staten Island PD to lock down the area, block off entry points, and prepare for a possible sting. Walsh rode in the lead car. Blueprints spread across her lap. "Delano's methodical," she told the team. "He avoids crowds. He won't risk showing up in daylight, but someone else might." As they neared the school's rear entrance, Rex sat up, alert. Daniels glanced at his partner. "You smell something?" Rex gave a low huff and leapt out as soon as the cruiser stopped. Inside, the gym was dark and echoing. Plastic sheeting hung from scaffolding, dust thick on the floor. Rex moved with purpose, nose to the ground, tail low. Suddenly he stopped, sniffed, and looked toward the bleachers. He barked. Once, then again. Daniels hurried over, pulling back a tarp to reveal a fresh duffel bag packed with children's clothes, tags still on, shoes in pairs, each labeled with a name and age. Next to it, a cooler with baby formula. Underneath, an envelope. Inside, 4 new passports. 3 matched photos from a recent Amber Alert. Walsh scanned the names. "These kids were marked for transit," she said. "Delano's not here, but this was a handoff site. Probably abandoned when we hit his house, but someone else is supposed to show." Daniels remembered the note. Passing the torch. They waited. Hours passed. Just before sunset, a van rolled up the back alley. No plates, no markings. 2 men inside. One stepped out, phone and clipboard in hand. Rex barked, the sound echoing through the gym. The man froze, then bolted. Officers swarmed the alley. A chase broke out across the lot. The man vaulted a fence but was tackled by Staten Island PD moments later. Inside the van, they found another child, barely 6, sleeping, drugged but alive. By nightfall, both suspects were in custody. One broke under questioning, revealing a payout system run by a shadowy figure known only as H. The case was growing. It wasn't just a ring, it was a network. At the center, children were being moved like cargo through public spaces, abandoned buildings, and city blind spots. But thanks to Rex, 5 more had been found in time. That night, Daniels leaned against the cruiser outside the precinct, Rex at his side, chewing on a well-earned treat. Walsh joined them, arms folded, gaze distant. "We're going to need federal help," she said. "This is bigger than anything we've seen." Daniels nodded. "At least now they know we're watching." Rex licked his chops and pressed against Daniels' leg. For a moment there was silence. Then, from across the street, a small voice called, "Rex!" It was Janelle, her caseworker, just behind. She ran up and hugged the dog around the neck. Rex stayed perfectly still, letting her bury her face in his fur. Sometimes words weren't needed. Sometimes a bark and a heartbeat were enough. By the end of the week, every precinct in the city had heard about Rex, the K9 who'd uncovered a trafficking network hiding in plain sight. But inside Manhattan's Special Victims Office, there was no celebration, just more questions and one name written in red at the top of the board. H. The brokers, the couriers, the handlers, all trails led to that letter. The 2 men caught at the school refused to give a full name. One just muttered, "He doesn't exist. He's always watching." Detective Walsh had seen hundreds of cases involving organized exploitation, but this one felt different. There was a level of precision, military-style logistics, rotating routes, burner accounts, fake companies. Whoever H was, they knew how to stay invisible. She glanced at Daniels, pouring coffee at the back of the room. Rex lay at his feet, asleep but twitching, as if chasing something in his dreams. "You look like you haven't been home in days," Walsh said. Daniels managed a tired smile. "Neither have you." "Difference is, I don't snore as loud as your partner." Rex opened one eye, as if offended. The room chuckled, but the laughter faded quickly, replaced by the quiet hum of exhaustion and worry. The next morning, a new lead came in. A forensic analyst had traced the serial number on one of the duffel bags from the school. It had been purchased online with a prepaid card linked to a warehouse in Newark, New Jersey. Walsh's instincts kicked in. That's not random. That's expansion. They coordinated with New Jersey State Police, who found something chilling. Similar cases in Newark, Trenton, and Camden. All in the last 6 months, children vanishing near train stations or shipping yards, no ransom, no motive, just gone. That night, the team met with a federal liaison from Homeland Security. A young analyst pulled up a map, dots spreading across the tri-state area. Red lines stretched across the map, connecting missing children to recent cargo shipments. "The pattern's clear," the analyst said. "Whoever's behind this is using legitimate freight routes, fast, efficient, and nearly impossible to trace." Walsh folded her arms, thinking how all of this had unraveled because a single dog refused to let a woman board a subway train. The analyst nodded. Sometimes it just takes one instinct to start a chain reaction. Daniels glanced down at Rex, giving him a gentle pat. By Friday, the task force was moving in on an old logistics hub near Newark's port. A maze of storage units, shipping containers, and forklifts. It was just past midnight, the air thick with fog and the sharp scent of diesel. Rex's paws echoed on the wet concrete as they moved between rows of containers. The only movement came from distant cranes and the low hum of generators. Suddenly, Rex stopped. His ears flicked, and he turned sharply toward a stack of containers labeled Atlantic Imports. "You got something?" Daniels whispered. Rex lowered his head and let out a deep, warning growl. Walsh signaled the team. "Fan out, quietly." They pried open the first container, empty. The second held crates of auto parts, but the third was different. Its door was welded shut. Rex barked, sharp and insistent. Walsh called for a cutting torch. When the seal finally broke and the door creaked open, a wave of warm, stale air escaped. Inside they found makeshift partitions, water jugs, food wrappers, and blankets. In the corner, a small backpack decorated with cartoon stars. Inside were papers, drawings, a school ID, and a note in a child's handwriting. "If someone finds this, tell my mom I was brave." Daniel's hand shook as he passed the note to Walsh. She met his eyes. "We're too late here," Rex whimpered, lowering his head. There were no bodies, just evidence of recent transport. Toothbrushes, socks, crumbs, a small stuffed bear. The place had been cleared out less than a day before. Someone had tipped them off. Someone inside the system was feeding the traffickers information. The next day, Internal Affairs launched an investigation. The team was pulled from fieldwork until the breach could be traced. Daniels protested, "We're close. If you pull us now, they'll disappear again." Walsh tried to reassure him. "We're not finished. We regroup and rebuild. That's how we catch them." But Daniels could feel it. The frustration, the urgency. Every instinct told him the network was already moving the next group. He was right. 2 nights later, a call came in. A long-haul trucker on Route 9 reported hearing cries from a nearby semi while stopped at a gas station near Elizabeth, New Jersey. The driver tried to confront the other trucker, but the vehicle sped off. The partial license plate matched a logistics fleet connected to the New York warehouse. Within 40 minutes, an all-points alert was issued. Daniels and Rex were cleared to respond. The chase crossed state lines, sirens slicing through the fog, lights flashing down the highway. The suspect truck weaved between lanes, desperate to escape. Rex braced himself in the back seat as Daniels pushed the cruiser to its limit, city lights fading behind them. Near a rest stop, the truck lost control on the slick road and slammed into a guardrail. The cab door flew open and a man bolted for the woods. "Rex, track!" Daniels shouted. The shepherd shot out of the cruiser like a bullet. claws digging into the cold earth, breath steaming in the night. The suspect vanished into the trees, but Rex was faster. Seconds later, a scream tore through the darkness. When Daniels caught up, he found the man pinned to the ground, Rex's jaws locked on his sleeve, a pistol lying several feet away. "Don't move," Daniels shouted. The man froze. For the first time, they had him. Oscar Delano. Back at headquarters, under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, Delano sat cuffed to the table. His face was bruised, but his expression was calm, almost smug. Walsh set the cartoon star backpack on the table. "Whose is this?" she asked. Delano glanced at it. "One of thousands." "You move them like freight," she said. He smirked. "Freight gets tracked. These don't." Walsh leaned in. "Whose age?" Delano's smile widened. "You've already met him." He nodded toward the observation window, where a federal agent from DHS stood watching. For a moment, no one spoke. Walsh's anger simmered. "You're saying he's—" But Delano just laughed. "Tell your dog he's good. He just started a war." They never got another word out of him. By dawn, Delano was found unresponsive in his cell. No signs of a struggle. Toxicology later revealed cyanide hidden in a dental capsule, a professional's exit. H was watching, Walsh whispered. That morning, Daniels took Rex down to the East River Pier, the same place where everything had started. The sky was overcast, the water restless. Daniels crouched beside his partner, scratching under his collar. "You did everything you could," he said quietly. "But they're still out there." Rex pressed his head against Daniels's arm, eyes steady and unwavering. No guilt, no hesitation, just purpose. That was the thing about dogs like him. They never gave up even when people did. Walsh joined them, coffee in hand. "They're transferring the case to the feds," she said softly. "But they want us consulting. You and Rex, are you in?" Daniels looked at her, then at the city skyline. The city they'd sworn to protect, scarred but unbroken. "Yeah," he said. "We're in." Rex wagged his tail, the first sign of hope that morning. The world was darker than they'd imagined, but they had a scent now, and they weren't stopping. The morning after Delano's death, Serena Walsh sat in her car outside a federal building in downtown Manhattan, gripping the steering wheel tighter than she realized. Inside, a federal task force was waiting, a mix of DHS, FBI, and a couple of unfamiliar faces. But they knew who she was. They knew about Rex. And they knew she and Daniels had gotten closer to the truth in 3 weeks than most agencies had in years. She took a breath and walked in. The briefing room was sterile. Whiteboard walls, 2 projectors, a single flag, and a pot of burnt coffee in the corner. Agent Braddock from DHS nodded as she entered. "Detective Walsh, glad you're here. You're our lead NYPD liaison moving forward." Walsh didn't hesitate. She sat down. "Let's talk about H." Braddock clicked a remote. On the screen appeared a web of wire transfers, shell companies, and blurred IDs, all linked to dummy logistics firms bidding on school renovation contracts and government supply shipments. "This individual doesn't show up in facial recognition, immigration, DMV, or even Interpol," Braddock said. "We only know the alias, H. Whoever he is, he's connected to missing minors in at least 4 states. All moved through legal shipping channels." Another click. A map appeared, red lines stretching from Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, and down the East Coast. "Most common drop point?" Walsh asked. Braddock hesitated. "Texas border, Ciudad Juarez." A chill ran down Walsh's spine. "So this is international?" "Most likely," Braddock replied. "And the kids?" Walsh pressed. Braddock didn't answer. Meanwhile, Daniels and Rex were at the K9 training grounds in upstate New York, an old prison yard now used for drills. But today wasn't about obedience or agility. It was about scent recognition. Rex had been trained on the scent markers from the duffel bags and van seats recovered during earlier rescues. Now they were testing whether he could pick up those same chemical traces on new shipments seized from suspected warehouses in Brooklyn and Newark. After 4 hours, Rex flagged 3 packages. All 3 tested positive for trace DNA from previously missing children. Daniels crouched beside him, wiping sweat from his brow. "Still got it, huh?" Rex panted, tongue out, tail wagging. No medals, no drama. Just the work. That night, Walsh showed up at Daniels's apartment with a bag of Chinese takeout still steaming. He looked surprised but didn't ask questions, just let her in. Rex was curled up by the window, keeping watch over the street below. "I need your help," Walsh said simply. Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Figured as much." She spread out folders, notes, and a flash drive on the table. "There's a name buried in the routing data from a Jersey trucking company. Not listed as an employee, but his ID was used to access the port of Houston twice." Daniels leaned in. "Name, Marcus Hale." He blinked. "You're kidding. You know him?" Walsh asked. Daniels nodded slowly. "Not personally, but I've seen the name. He's a contractor, used to consult for FEMA disaster response. I think he trained logistics dogs." Rex let out a low growl. They ran Hale's name through every system they could access. Nothing in the FBI database, but buried in a 2016 Department of Transportation contract archive, his signature appeared on a subcontract for emergency supply chain audits. He'd been inside the very systems the task force was now trying to trace. Walsh leaned back. "He's not just a trafficker, he's an architect. He built the routes." Daniels nodded. "And now he's using them." The next morning, they presented their findings to the Joint Task Force. Braddock hesitated. "It's circumstantial." Walsh shot back. "He ghosted the system." "That's not circumstantial, that's expertise." Daniels pressed. "Give us 72 hours. Let us find him." Braddock looked at them, then at Rex, who sat at attention beside the projector cart. "Fine. But you're on your own." Walsh just muttered, "Wouldn't be the first time." The lead took them to Syracuse, New York, where Hale had once run a small K9 training facility for disaster relief. It had been closed for years, overgrown and boarded up, but Daniels spotted fresh tire tracks in the mud behind the building. Inside, Rex froze at a filing cabinet. They pried it open and found laminated ID cards, every one fake, and a logbook with names and transport dates. The last entry, 1-13 Buffalo outbound. 3 units, West Corridor, H. Sig, confirmed. Walsh closed the book. "He's still active." Daniels powered up a dusty laptop from the desk. It auto-connected to a hotspot. He ran a recovery tool and found a spreadsheet, GPS logs updated just 48 hours ago, and an address, Flagstaff, Arizona. Back at NYPD, Walsh and Daniels prepped to fly out. It wasn't an official operation, but Rex was loaded onto the plane without question. The FBI would follow in 24 hours. Walsh wasn't waiting. Neither was Rex. Flagstaff was cold when they landed, desert wind cutting through their jackets. The address led them to a remote property outside the city, an old mining warehouse, now a storage and transport hub. The buildings were wide and low, perfect for hiding anything or anyone. They arrived just after sunset. No lights, no movement. Daniels turned to Rex. "Find." The shepherd didn't hesitate, pulling them toward a metal hangar at the back of the compound, padlocked shut. Rex barked. They cut the lock. What they found inside would haunt them forever. 10 children, some sleeping, some awake, all wearing headphones connected to white noise machines. The room was soundproofed. They wouldn't have heard help coming or going. Each child wore a wristband with a number. No names, just numbers. Rex moved from child to child, sniffing gently as if counting. Daniels fought back tears. Walsh whispered, "We got him." But Walsh knew it wasn't over. Hale was still out there. They swept the rest of the compound. In the office, a single computer screen was left on, showing a live video feed. It displayed a shipping dock under harsh floodlights, a truck being loaded with something large. Then the camera glitched and went dark. Walsh stared at the monitor. "Where is that?" Daniels checked the timestamp. "That's happening tonight." They called it in. The hunt for H was down to the wire. They had less than 2 hours. After rescuing 10 children from the Flagstaff warehouse, Walsh and Daniels reviewed every frame of the live feed before it cut out. The footage was grainy, but one detail stood out. A yellow crane with faded white numbers. 40425. It wasn't just a random marking. It was a location code. Within minutes, the FBI confirmed it. Port of Long Beach, California. A known trafficking route. By the time their plane landed in California, it was nearly 3 a.m. The port was enormous. Miles of containers, cranes, and warehouses. Without a precise lead, finding the right truck would be impossible. That's where Rex came in. Daniels barely had the leash clipped before Rex pulled hard, leading them straight toward Dock 9. The air was thick with salt, steel, and diesel, but Rex moved with purpose, nose down, eyes sharp. He darted past forklifts and shipping crates as if following an invisible trail. Rex stopped suddenly, growling low and steady. They rounded a corner and saw it. A long-haul truck backed up to a container marked Juneau Logistics. A man was lifting a small child into the back. No lights, no sound. "Federal agents!" Walsh shouted. "Hands up!" The man bolted. Daniels unclipped the lead. "Rex, go!" The shepherd shot across the asphalt, closing the gap in seconds. The suspect, mid-40s and quick, almost made it behind a stack of containers before Rex tackled him, pinning him to the ground with a deep, echoing growl. By the time agents arrived, the man was on the ground, whimpering, blood from a scraped cheek mixing with tears. Inside the trailer, they found 4 children, scared, confused, but alive. One boy clutched a stuffed raccoon. Another whispered, "Are you the ones from the news?" Walsh blinked back tears. "You are now." The suspect refused to give his name, but his fingerprints told the story. Marcus Hale, former FEMA contractor known as H. They had him. In the weeks that followed, a federal grand jury indicted Hale on 27 counts: child trafficking, identity fraud, conspiracy to evade national security protocols. With Delano gone, Hale was the last piece of the puzzle. But he didn't go quietly. At every hearing, he sat in silence, never speaking a word. Only once did he look at Walsh before sentencing and smile. Meanwhile, the children rescued from Flagstaff and Long Beach were reunited with families or placed in high-level protective care. The girl with the raccoon, her name was Madison, hadn't spoken in weeks until Rex visited her during a therapy session. She touched his vest, looked into his eyes, and whispered, "Thank you." The therapist told Daniels it was her first word in 3 months. Rex didn't need medals or ceremonies, but one afternoon in New York, the mayor insisted. In a small courtyard behind City Hall, with dozens of rescued children and officers in attendance, Rex was awarded a silver K9 service medal, only the second ever given in NYPD history. Daniels knelt beside him, rubbing his fur. "You earned it, buddy." Rex just wagged his tail, already scanning the crowd for the next job. For him, the work was never done. Weeks later, life began to settle, at least a little. Walsh returned to her desk with a new badge, Permanent Federal Task Force Consultant. Daniels split his time between patrol and K9 demonstrations at local schools, teaching kids that dogs like Rex do more than sniff for drugs or bombs. They save lives. One afternoon, a boy in the front row raised his hand. "Does Rex ever get scared?" Daniels smiled. "He gets careful. Never scared." The boy nodded, understanding something deeper than words. That evening, Daniels and Walsh walked Rex through Central Park. The sky was painted orange, the air crisp. "We did good," Walsh said. Daniels nodded. "Yeah, we did." They paused at the edge of the lake, city lights twinkling across the water. Rex sat between them, still alert, always watching. "You think there are more?" Walsh asked. Daniels didn't answer right away. He looked down at his partner. Rex's ears perked, sensing a distant squirrel, or maybe something more. "I think we stay ready," Daniels finally said, "just in case. Thank you for following this story inspired by real events. Stories like Rex's remind us that heroes don't always speak, and sometimes the strongest protectors walk on 4 legs. What do you think would have happened if Rex hadn't barked on that subway platform? Share your thoughts, and if you've ever seen a dog do something incredible, we'd love to hear your story.